Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. This is the Oracle Open Q&A webinar presented by Miro Consulting. My name is Sean Donahue, and I'm the VP of Marketing here at Miro. Joining me today is Wayne Federico, COO and VP of Technical Services, as well as Elliot Arlo Colon, Senior VP and Partner. Here at Miro Consulting, we specialize in software license audit defense, license management, subscription management, and cloud services for Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, and Adobe. If you have any questions during the broadcast, please use the question box in your webinar control panel, and we'll answer them at the end of the sessions. Your questions will only be visible to us, the presenters. With that, I'm going to start us off with the first question from our audience, and it has to do with cloud migrations. Question is, what are some of the biggest software license agreement gotchas when considering a move from on-premise to the cloud?
Well, some of the more common gotchas are exactly what is going to happen with your on-premise annual support agreements. Many companies out there who are looking to move to a cloud agreement sometimes get tripped up a bit in trying to understand and to determine what exactly will happen to the line items that were on-premise, that were previously being used, and whether or not those will either disappear from their next support renewal or be migrated for some kind of value against their new cloud agreement, or somehow change in some other way. It's being split up into renewals and such. So it's very important to understand that your existing on-premise support renewal and licensing agreements are still in force until they're actually amended or terminated, or something's in writing that's allowing some kind of trade-in to be used against new value. Nothing should be assumed, and you should really try to see the impact of renewal cost during the actual migration to cloud, and it should be stated somewhere in your agreement, if you are getting credit for on-premise, exactly what that credit is and what your future support is going to look like.
Okay, I'm going to take this as Wayne. I'm going to take the next one, API triggers. Can the use of APIs trigger an audit? Definitely, this is something we've seen for many years. More and more people today use much more integration. So it's more common to see it more often now. We used to most commonly see it with applications, because Oracle applications, their typical metrics that a lot of people use are the application user. And when you have an application user metric, when somebody goes and uses an API, which commonly we'll see people create a specialized application for their particular company that leverages an API, let's say for e-business, and it enables users who don't actually ever need to log in. Maybe they're remote users or people that are like a delivery people or something to that extent. They're just using devices or an application through a particular device that goes through that API. Well, to Oracle, you have to count at the front end. So that's why it'll get picked up and more questions will come out from Oracle, because they're expecting, well, wait a minute, you can't just use that API and not be getting licenses for all of those people. Even though they don't log in, they come into the API. To Oracle, those are still users. So each one of those would have to be licensed. You can get into special licenses and so forth for that, but they still have to be licensed. So that's definitely something we see with applications, and you can even run into it with database. Because people can run database just with named user. And for the same reason, if you're using APIs to tie into that database and you're only named user, then Oracle's going to look for additional license or maybe a bump up to processor-based. So it's definitely something that can draw Oracle's attention for a potential audit. So, all right, next one. True-ups and shortfalls. Is a software license audit really a major concern? Don't most vendors just let you true up if there are shortfalls? Now, this is definitely something we run into because clients will think, and this is pretty common with people who think of like Microsoft licensing with an enterprise agreement, because part of that agreement, people just true up every year. So they're not really focused per se on, hey, I got to get licenses, when I need, when I'm actually starting to use them. They go and just wait till the end of the year. They add up the extra that they're actually using, and they buy them then. However, in audits, even Microsoft, if it's not an ELA situation or it's licenses that are outside of an ELA, they're going to kind of, even a best case scenario, they'll still charge you less of a discount. But in Oracle, it can be even trickier because Oracle comes in and they'll audit you in regards to your environment at a point in time. And that point in time, if at that point they determine, yeah, you have way more usage than you have licenses, even if you can make some changes to your environment, Oracle still will count everything as of when that point in time was done. So we've run into people who have the impression that, well, I'll just tell Oracle I'll make some changes, and then because I really don't need all of those licenses, and then this way I only buy what I need. Well, that doesn't work with Oracle, because Oracle looks at it as, no, you still got to pay us something because you were using more licenses than you should have been in the past, and we never got any revenue for that. So that's gonna, we want our piece of the pie. So that's something to watch. Don't make that assumption of just a true up. All right.
Okay, this one is name users and annual support. I have some older name user database licenses that are not deployed, and yet I'm still paying annual support. What can I do with these to get value from them? So, in reference to Oracle name users, there's many companies that we speak with who talk about name user licenses and some of their older name user licenses, and having significant frustration as to what can I do with these? I'm not using them; they're shelfware, and I'm paying annual support constantly on these. What's the value? And just to let you know that there's a few different strategies that can be employed here with these older name user licenses. One of the strategies is a negotiated upgrade in which a certain amount of named users can actually be converted into a processor-based license. So there's some value that can come out of that, because essentially you're converting a limited use to a named user, someone who has access and authority to use the program, and then you're converting a number of those into something that's an unlimited user license based upon the processor being licensed. So that's a very significant value add to many companies who have excess name users, and something that they can do there. Also, too, in the case of conversion, it's also not an all or nothing proposition. You could have, a few hundred named users in excess, but maybe want to hedge a bit and maybe not convert or trade in all of your named users, but you can trade in a subset. So it's not an all or nothing. You could actually keep some in reserve to be used at a future date, future deployment, and still convert some to create these more valuable processor-based licenses. Keep in mind, though, when converting, that there's no reverse of that action. So there's no plan or option for reversing from going from processor-based into named user. So you can go to named user to processor, but not processor to named user.
Okay. IBM and Oracle. If I enable IBM's hyperthreading, Power 8, do I need to license the hyperthreads? Now, it used to be this never needed to be a question in the past because Oracle's long not licensed by hyperthreading, but it's a good question in this day and age because we know that SE2 has a little mix of hyperthreading in it that doesn't directly affect licensing, but it does indirectly affect it. Some of the stuff they're doing with on the AWS platforms and so forth, that all of a sudden starts talking about hyperthreading. But as of now, the IBM's, any hyperthreading on the IBMs, you don't have to worry about or concern yourself with. That does not involve any licensing. A couple aspects specific to those devices, though, is if you utilize any of the Turbo Core features, Turbo Core mode is not permitted as a means to kind of reduce the number of software licenses. It's a feature that we very rarely run into clients using, but it's worth noting that you can't. Turbo Core lets you kind of shut off some stuff, but Oracle doesn't recognize that, so you can't do anything with that. So you make sure you understand that. The second question to that grouping is, if I use IBM CPU pool technology and multiple Oracle instances use an individual CPU pool, is this legit configuration? Now, you can definitely use IBM CPU pool technology. Now, and you could have multiple Oracle instances in it. And even though Oracle's own write-ups will actually indicate that everything has to be capped, it's not so hard set as that. If you set a pool size, and let's say you got a 32 processor, a 32 core server, and you allocate 20 to a particular pool. Any of the instances that are running in that pool, you're going to have to license those 20 cores for those products. So if you've got 4 instances and you have one of the, and they're all like the same, like they're all like database EE of database, yet maybe one of the instances uses partitioning option, another one uses advanced security. You would have to license up to that entire pool for both of those. I'm going to say it's a processor licensing. You'd have to get processor licensing of 20 for each one of those: database, partitioning, and advanced security. Even though some of the instances don't use partitioning and advanced security, you'd have to license. That kind of becomes the boundary. Now, the thing you have to be a little careful with that is if you do some overlap, right? Because it's possible you can set up 2 different pool IDs in a single server, going back to that 32 core server. And let's say each one of those pool IDs has access to potentially 20 cores. Well, obviously, there's only 32 physical cores in the system, so somebody's going to lose out. But from a licensing perspective, you'd still be required to license to the max, because from Oracle's point of view, well, hey, I don't know if that, if I'm running separate types of products, right? Let's say you're running WebLogic in the one pool and you're running database in the other pool. Well, depending upon how busy either one of those pools are in regards to requiring all of the CPUs in the pool, the WebLogic could potentially take up all 20, or the database could take up all 20. So Oracle would actually require you to license 20 CPUs for WebLogic, 20 CPUs for database. So you have to be careful with what stuff you put on things, because you could end up licensing more than you would ever actually be able to use. But CPU pools are definitely usable, and they're usable basically with a single unit, single frame. The only one you have to be careful of is that is along the same lines is the live partition mobility. If you activate live partition mobility, then all of a sudden all of this kind of LPAR usage and so forth goes away, and you have to license both of those frames that are running live partition for all of the licensing. So it does depend quite a bit on the configuration, but you can definitely use the pools as a method of limiting. All right, next.
Elliot, did you want to take this question?
Yep, sure. Negotiating tips. Oracle can be very difficult to negotiate with, even for their long-term customers. Do you have any negotiating tips? Okay. There's a few different things that Oracle sells these days. There's quite a bit. But right now, Oracle really does have an extreme focus on its cloud offerings, even though it's still very much happy to sell on-premise licensing and the various options and packs, such as the 12C options that enhance the Oracle on-premise licensing as well as cloud. Now, in terms of the negotiating tips, the most important thing is for especially if you're looking to purchase Oracle Cloud offering, is to really understand what you're using on the on-premise, and to ensure that from the get-go that you're compliant on your on-premise. Surprisingly, most companies who are looking to acquire cloud options and cloud agreements from Oracle or from other companies that compete with Oracle tend to ignore compliance on their own during this investigation and negotiation. Big mistake. Big mistake because in most cases what the vendors are looking for, and especially Oracle, is to ensure that the products that are being used for potential termination or trade-in for cloud are actually products that you're using. So it's like, and anything that's being used in excess can actually work against you in a negotiation for cloud. If you, as an example, have 50 users of a particular license, and it is deemed that you're deploying hundreds, well, in a cloud negotiation, besides being priced for the larger quantity, you now have an issue on your on-premise because that has been identified that you're technically out of compliance. Oracle would have the right to actually charge you for that fee, even prior to accepting your order for cloud, or it can hurt your negotiation your negotiation stance on pricing terms and conditions on the cloud if you're deemed to be going into that negotiation already out of compliance and owing Oracle money. So it's really, really important that you don't neglect your on-premise licensing, compliance. You really need to know what you own on-premise. You really need to know how it's deployed. You really need to have a preparation of due diligence to ensure you're compliant. because in most cases, the cloud negotiations are going to really open you up wide to full disclosure to that vendor as to what you're using, because that's how you're going to get your cloud pricing and your cloud statement of work. And at that moment, guaranteed, there's going to be a check to see, based upon that usage requirement, how does that compare to your on-premise? And that may be used in the negotiation that could hinder your ability to get best pricing. So make sure your house is in order, current house is in order, before you're deciding to move, is what I would say.
And this is Sean. I just want to throw in an extra tip there. One of the best tips we can give you for negotiating with Oracle is don't go it alone. You would do much better if you would hire a firm like Miro. We have done negotiations for hundreds of clients with Oracle. We know how to get the best pricing, and we know how to help you figure out what you have and how to best support it. So that would be the last question for today. Again, if you have any further questions, you can reach us at miroconsulting.com. You can email us at info@miroconsulting.com or give us a call at 732-738-8511, extension 1208. So this concludes today's webinar. Thank you, and everybody have a great day.